Welcome and welcome back. We are here for a review of the very first Falcon and the Winter Soldier episode, and I have to say that right off the top, this series seems like it's going to kick ass. Maybe I'm still a little bit salty from the way that WandaVision ended, but this, though it is a return to form in the classic sort of action, more than drama sphere for Marvel, it seems like they know exactly what they're doing with this. So there's definitely something to be said for that. Now, one thing that I want to know, so we're going to start obviously with that dogfight scene, but right before that, the one thing that I thought was a beautiful homage to the greater Marvel universe, and there are a lot of little touches for Marvel fans here. Sam is standing in the plane where he's about to exit in order to take part in this dogfight, and Commander or whatever his name is says, "Sam, this has to be subtle," and Sam agrees, and then falls out of the plane like Iron Man in Iron Man 2, stating, well, you think it needs to be subtle, I've got some flourish in my character. Moving on from that, George St. Pierre, I thought, did a fantastic job as Batroc, retaining the role of Batroc. Had a lot more dialogue here, I think, than he had in the entire movie of Captain America Winter Soldier, but I thought he did a really good job with it, even though most of it was in French, so there's that. But the only thing I really want to hear out of him is, sometimes the bad guy's stock, it is up, stock is down, it's like the stock market, which is what he said for basically an entire year leading up to the Michael Bisping fight. So it would be funny to see him throw something like that in, to see the writers do that for him. But I have to say that opening sequence with the dogfight, that was the coolest dogfight sequence I think I have ever seen. So they have a lot of the small cliches that go along with dogfight scenes, such as the bullets coming in hot, right? But how do you get rid of it? You've got this little helper guy in your backpack, send him after him. I've never seen that before. You've got what else was it? Oh, right. Time and time again in dogfight sequences, normally it's the good guy, because the good guy's being chased. Normally it's the good guy says, okay, well, I have the smaller aircraft. I'm going to go through this narrow corridor. I've never seen that done with people. So they have the flying squirrel suits, and then you have Falcon with the giant wings. Those guys go through the narrow corridor, and Falcon ends up tearing up his wings on the sides there. I thought that was a beautiful touch. What they're doing, what they did with that scene, is they said, okay, what does the standard dogfight scene look like? What does that look like? Then they took it and said, okay, we have individuals in flying squirrel suits. We have an individual with wings. How can we play on this? I've never seen the whole thing where... It's also interesting because the entire scene takes place between different... You've got the helicopter, you've got the plane, you've got the individuals. And they're jumping back and forth between the things, right? I've never seen the whole let me fly through the helicopter and get what I need thing done. There was the part where he just sort of pops up in the other helicopter, which I thought it's all well done. It's all so well done in here. Then we move on to the Smithsonian scene. And one thing I thought that was good about that was he talks about... Sam talks about the need for new heroes, ones suited for the times we're in. And then they cut to Rhodey. Obviously, Rhodey wears a suit. That is his whole shtick, just like Iron Man. So one's suited for the times we're in. This is a small nod to the War Machine series that we're going to be getting. And if this War Machine from the comics was always one of the coolest characters, so if this series is any indication of what it is that we're going to be getting from this Disney Plus stuff for these suited characters, for these smaller characters, we're in for a treat with that series. But then Sam continues talking about how Steve is gone. And the focus keeps going back to Rhodey. Because guess why? So is Iron Man. Iron Man's gone too. So both of these guys were sort of the strong second to the first, which was Iron Man, Captain America. These guys were the sidekick characters, right? These series are going to be these characters searching for identities of their own, obviously, right? I mean, we knew we were going to get that. It is interesting to see this done in such a convincing manner so far, one episode in to Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now, this is obviously Falcon's series so far. If the rest of the series, he's the only, well, we have clear motivating factors for both characters, right? Bucky wants to make amends. Sam wants to save his family's business. Both of these things are going to end up going through some bad guy thing. Look, Sam's in need of money, right? We're going to go and find ourselves at some point in this series in a moral quandary where they've stopped some major heist and Sam could get away with a lot of money, which rightfully he should, right? It's from the bad guys, right? The bad guys. And he's not going to take it. That's going to be a moral defining moment for him. But I want to move on to Bucky's therapy session, which was fantastic. God, that was awesome. The character dynamics between Bucky and his therapist were fantastic. The delivery from Sebastian Stan was fantastic. So the Winter Soldier, the flashback leading to that, you knew that was going to lead somewhere. You didn't know where. It was interesting to see him pop on scene as the introduction that we have to him is as the Winter Soldier. Not as the character that we know, not as the good guy, but as the bad guy. That is the introduction we get to him. And he's sitting there with his therapist, and she's talking to him, and she says it's a condition of your pardon. You have to tell me about these things. It is a condition of your pardon. Otherwise, if you're not honest with me, we're sending you behind lots of bars for lots of time, right? That is the clear indication here. And Bucky is still doing what he wants. Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me what to do. It's almost a shame that Sebastian Stan was cast as Bucky, because throughout his parts of this movie, there are clear and definitive Wolverine vibes. And okay, so he's got a Japanese friend. He's eating sushi. He's drinking sake. He has an obvious affinity for Japanese women. There's so much of this is Wolverine. He's standoffish. He's prickish. He has flashbacks. He has nightmares. All of this stuff. It's basically Wolverine. He's basically Wolverine in this episode. And you can tell. So one of the good things that this episode did, that we're being led to believe this entire series is going to do, subtle hints. When he is at dinner with his friend mentions something about my son. I just want to know how he died. And then Bucky is obviously perturbed by this. And you understand right there, Bucky killed him. You understand right there. You don't have to walk into, well, I mean, it tells us who it is that Bucky killed, but we could have gotten there eventually, with a smaller hint. But when he goes to his friend's apartment and he sees the picture of the guy that Bucky killed earlier in the episode, or that the Winter Soldier killed earlier in the episode, this again, that's a small Wolverine vibe. I mean, all the things that Wolverine has done and is not proud of, or was brainwashed into, or was tricked into, was sort of massaged into, all of these different things. Real definitive Wolverine vibes in this entire episode from the Bucky character. You move on to Louisiana with Uncle Sam. Sam is an uncle, and you get real... Look, I'm an uncle. I know how it is to be leading your life and feel like you've let down a sibling who's doing more standard world things, right? Having kids and doing the business thing. Um, and we get an obvious motivation here. He wants to save the family business. And there is the look, here the superheroes aren't millionaires. Strange, maybe, that they can't set up OnlyFans accounts. I'm not sure why. I think that there would be prime dollars for a Falcon OnlyFans, for a Winter Soldier OnlyFans, right? But it is interesting to see that dynamic, something that you don't really get all that often in the comics. Sometimes you do, but you don't really get it all that often in the comics, and you often wonder, what do these guys do for a living, right? Um, and that was a problem for me in the comics everywhere but a few places. You've got Iron Man and Batman who are millionaires on their own. You have the X-Men who are funded by Charles Xavier, right? Or Xavier's family, technically, right? But from whence does the money come? So it is interesting to see that set up. One small thing that I thought was great from Bucky's date scene was if your husband dies, they call you a widow. If your parents die, they call you an orphan. But if your children die, we don't even have a word for that. That was an interesting and unique observation. I have never heard that question posed. But I think that overall, big picture, what we're doing here is we're getting a lot of good stuff. And the motivating factors here, Bucky wants to make amends, Sam wants to save the family. You have layered on top of that the good guy stuff going on. There's going to be something come up and they have to fight the bad guys. We have a good introduction to the villains. We have the superpowered individual who basically a superpowered member of Antifa pops up there, jumps out of the window, cold cocks the cop, smashes Sam's friend's head. I think that that's a good introduction to the bad guys. That will be so. Here's the thing. I hate to keep making comparisons to WandaVision, but it's the only other thing we've had from Marvel in a year. It's the only other thing we have from Marvel on Disney Plus. So much of WandaVision felt very focusless when we're comparing it to Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We didn't know who the bad guy was going into the final episode of WandaVision. Sure, we found out a little bit about Agnes and things. We didn't have a motivating factor for the villain. All of these different things that we didn't have until the end. I don't think this series is going to jerk us around in the way that WandaVision did. Will it be as outright creative? Maybe not. Looks like we're going to lose some of that. Will they have the budget for special effects? It looks like it after that dogfight scene. But when you think about it, when you really sit down and think about it, that was the only big effects moment in this episode. 50 minutes of content, one effects-driven sequence. It was a good one. It was a long one. Probably cost a lot of money. But it was just the one. If there is one large action set piece per episode, I'm probably fine with that. The acting, the cinematography, the dialogue, all of those things were so masterful in this episode. And look, it's not Christopher Nolan level. I'm not claiming that. But when you go back and you watch the therapy session with Bucky, and all the things they're doing with camera angles, all of the things they're doing with lighting, you have Bucky up against that painting that makes him look lost in the woods. You have the lighting on the painting that is angling harshly down towards Bucky. You have the whatever the camera angle is called, where what you're doing is you're seeing basically this much of the therapist's face, and you have all of the harsh lighting on her in that shot that feels persecutory. And that's just the therapy scene. I'm not taking time to talk about all of the soft lighting in the date scene for Bucky. I'm not taking time to talk about all of the warm lighting when you have Sam with his family. There's so much going on here. There's so much going on here. There was so much put into this that every moment, look, this episode was 50 minutes. Well, probably about 42, because there's 7 minutes of credits in this episode. And you have a couple minutes of intro. So you're looking at about 42 minutes here. It sure didn't feel like it. And there was only one action set piece. The rest of it was dialogue, was character building, was motivation building. And then the one fight scene with the introduction of the bad guys. The flag smashers, right? Sounds very Antifa. I was thoroughly impressed with this. I thought that this was a fantastic beginning. I don't see this falling off because it wasn't like there was one great scene and then the rest of it. The whole thing was so consistent that I feel we're going to get consistency through this entire series. One thing I want to talk about, there was more cursing in this than any of the Marvel movies and all of WandaVision combined. We had 3 shits. We had a bullshit, 2 regular shits. We had an ass and a sick ass. All we had in WandaVision was kick-ass. I'm not throwing this around simply to be language police. What I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, this is going to be a much more adult-feeling series than we've had maybe in all of Marvel. I think that there are definitive audience limitations on all of the Marvel movies. You go back, Iron Man 1 is the harshest, most adult-feeling Marvel movie. I would say episode 1 of Falcon and the Winter Soldier is number 2. So here's one thing. If we're making Disney Plus comparisons, and I've been doing it with WandaVision this entire time, this feels, to me, and hey, maybe it's because I'm the target market here, this feels to me on par with season 1 of The Mandalorian. Maybe that's just me. Maybe there's no standard bearing there. Maybe that is completely misled. But this felt that way to me. Even the one criticism that I have of WandaVision that I do not have for The Mandalorian is that these small players in WandaVision felt hokey. They felt that you were supposed to look at this character when you're supposed to look at them and don't think about them when they're not there. I wondered about Sam's friend the entire time he was not on screen. I wondered about Bucky the entire time we were with Sam. I wondered about Sam the entire time we were with Bucky. That is the dynamic built by real characters. And I think that is something that we have gotten from the series so far. I thought that the date scene was really good. I don't want to watch a date on a Marvel movie, right? I don't care about that. But it was so good. It was so good that it wasn't a painful scene while we were in it. Oh, where are we going here? And there were even small parts of that scene when Bucky reaches out and tries to stop the cat arm from bop, 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 right? Sort of like in Iron Man 2 again. When the thing is on Tony's desk and he reaches out and tries to stop it. But that was a small thing. Look, Bucky's a no-nonsense guy. Then she pulls out the board game. What's the board game? Battleship. Right? How old are you? 106. And she laughs, and he tries to pretend he's laughing too. So much of that was so Wolverine-ish, right? So much of that was very... So one thing about it is Wolverine always feels like a Bukowski character. Wolverine in the comics always feels like Chinaski on the page. Bucky here feels like a Bukowski character, but pretty. So we have an interesting dynamic here with him. If this ends up being Sam's series, because this episode was predominantly Sam. There was good scenes from Bucky, but it was driven by Sam. I've got no problem with that. And I never really, outside of Captain America Winter Soldier, I never really liked the Sam character. I didn't dislike him, but there was nothing. He was never as cool in the movies as he was in the opening scene to this. And that's the impressive thing that we're going to be getting from the Disney Plus stuff. We're going to be getting real character building from small-time characters to make them as interesting, frankly, as interesting as they are in the comics. Frankly, as interesting as they were when we were 8 years old, reading the comic books, collecting the cards, watching the cartoons. All of those smaller characters were cool. All of those smaller characters were people whom, when the show wasn't on and we were with our friends, someone was dressing up as or pretending to be, etc., etc. We're going to be getting that from the Disney Plus series, from the series that appear on Disney Plus. As a Marvel fan, as a Disney shareholder, quite frankly, that's exciting. Because it's, even with WandaVision, Agnes came across as an interesting character. They made money off of the "It Was Agnes All Along" song. I can imagine the profile of both Vision and Wanda being raised in the popular consciousness, right? How many Funko Pops are you going to sell from that, etc., etc. But I think this series, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, has a marketing type potential like The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian single-handedly brought Star Wars back from destruction. Single-handedly. After that movie franchise, after all the stuff they're doing in the comics, in the books, etc., etc., The Mandalorian single-handedly brought Star Wars back from the verge of destruction. Here's the thing. That Baby Yoda character, I guarantee you, merchandise for Baby Yoda outsells everything from the last trilogy of movies. BB-8 sold a bunch of stuff. The Porgs sold a bunch of stuff. You didn't sell anything from any of the other characters in those movies. I guarantee you, Baby Yoda, Grogu, merchandise has outsold everything from the rest of the new Disney era Star Wars stuff. That said, with the Marvel series, if you continue to crank out things which produce... Look, I have a coworker who really loved WandaVision. Wanda is now near the top of her Marvel hierarchy. That character. If that happens now with either Bucky or Sam, not to mention any of the other characters, we'll just take those two, either Bucky or Sam in this series, that becomes more profitable. If that happens with Rhodey in the War Machine series, you just keep cranking it out, right? In a way that the movies never, or in a way that the movies stopped doing, because the movies became so oriented towards multiple characters that the focus on a single character got lost. So you were never able to duplicate. Iron Man was a D-list character until Robert Downey Jr. started playing him. Until he had 3 movies, individual, 3 solo movies, to grow the character and build the character. That is what we stand to do on these Disney Plus series. So much so that while and whereas these have been predominantly B-list characters, War Machine, Bucky, Winter Soldier, Wanda, Vision, I think we're going to start seeing trickling into this A-list characters. It would not surprise me if we end up getting an entire Wolverine series. It would not surprise me if we end up getting an entire, what was Captain America doing between movies series. If we get a miniseries for the X-Men. If we get a movie series building the Young Avengers. Well, the Young Avengers are more B-list characters anyway. But you see what I'm saying? If we end up getting more and more on Disney Plus, because one thing that we lost with the movies was time dedicated to individual characters. Now, going all the way back to the original Avengers movie, Joss Whedon pulled that off flawlessly, giving every character their moments, right? It was done again in Guardians of the Galaxy. Every character had their moments. Avengers 2 fell off. Avengers 3 and 4, every character had some moments, but there were so many characters that you were not able to build a mythos for any of them. In that first Avengers movie, Iron Man learns to be selfless. That built the mythos of Iron Man. He's the one that takes off with the nuke. Captain America relearns to be a leader. He takes control of the Avengers. The Hulk came out and smashed. Right? We finally got that. With Natasha and Clint, we had this little bit of mythos building with, hey, don't you remember the good old days? Which we still haven't had a payoff for which we still have not had a payoff. After that, though, with the Avengers movies, so Avengers 2 gave us Vision, but that felt half-baked. Avengers 2 gave us Ultron. That felt half-baked. Who wanted one movie, one appearance from Ultron, one of the best comic book villains in the Marvel Comics universe? Who wanted that to be a one-off character? Not me. Not me. And he had so little screen time that I was upset, right? It seemed like a waste of a character as large as Ultron. I keep hoping what this is doing is this is going to give us, instead of a Doctor Doom, instead of a Doom movie, that we're going to get 6 episodes, 7 episodes, 8, 9 episodes to build that character and his mythos. If that is where we're leading, if that is what we end up getting because the Disney Plus stuff is so on point, with the exception of WandaVision at the end, okay? A lot of stuff didn't come together with WandaVision. Whatever. If what we get here is Kevin Feige acknowledging that there is not just responsibility, but opportunity through Disney Plus. Not just responsibility to do series, but opportunity to really expand the cinematic universe. If they get the budgets to really do these things well, which so far seems to be the case, then I think this is going to not only be a boon for the Marvel Cinematic Universe and all of the world building that happens there, but also Disney Plus. 100 million subscribers already. So here's something interesting to think about. The Marvel Cinematic Universe already has 21 movies, 22 movies, 21 movies released. Apparently they've shot how many by now? 25? They just can't release them, right? 21 movies, I think, and 2 TV series. It is so much larger than Star Wars already that it is laughable. But it does not feel more expansive than the Star Wars universe. Somehow they've put out so much more content, but made it feel so much smaller than Star Wars, that I think they have some room for improvement there. So that is all I have for this, the review for the episode 1 of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I will be doing these reviews weekly. If you want to see these things, consider hitting that subscribe button. And yeah, I hope to see you next week for the next episode of this series.